Okay, right. One sec. Let's do it again. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the NERDJUCE podcast. I am your host this evening, so it's never going to get better than this. So you may as well stop watching after this episode. But unfortunately, we're not being joined tonight. We're 2 members down. Nathan, unfortunately, couldn't make it, and Liam, the power's gone to his head after hosting last week, and he's decided to start the Opieverse again and has left us all. That is complete lies, but the boys who are here today, let's bring them on now. How are we doing?
Good evening.
Hello. So subtle.
Tech problems.
From what the people in the chat don't know, we were just talking like we were live, and then like we all just like looked over at YouTube and just went, "No, we're fucking not." So...
I started the countdown, but never actually started the live stream countdown. I thought I was doing it at like the same time, but Liam
Liam is going to absolutely rinse you for that.
I was going to say, like,
no
one can tell Liam about this. Somehow we'll edit this part out. And
if we could just clip it so that, like, whatever he sees on YouTube starts like a minute and a half in, so he never knows, we'll be fine.
Yeah, for God's sake. I started the countdown and everything. We were sat there for 30 seconds in silence, waiting for the stream to start. Oh my God. All right.
You've missed. Everyone's missed all the important stuff now. We had all the great conversations while we were live.
Yeah, we were talking about
NERDJUCE. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Chris is in tonight. Star Wars and Beyond. Parsecs in.
Oh,
Mr. Everyone heard us, but what? Heard? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Amy said she could hear that the stream wasn't working. So basically, we were like, everyone basically heard part 1. So.
Okay.
We started me talking about Bad Batch, but no one could see me.
Moving on. So, unfortunately, Liam couldn't be here today. So, he has sent in, very kindly, a pre-recorded video for us all to watch. None of us have seen it. So, for all we know, it could be NSFW. So, if you're at work right now, maybe tune out. I doubt it, though. But he's basically continuing on and picking up where we left off last week with the novels and comics discussion. So here he is, the man himself.
Sorry I couldn't be there this week. Business to attend to. I know my priorities are all over the place, but I'm sure you guys will host a fantastic stream nonetheless. And I'll probably be watching in the comments anyway. Last week when I was hosting, a question was asked about good Star Wars books and comics to read, and I promised I'd answer it. And even though I can't be there, I've done this video for you anyway. That's how committed I am. This is especially relevant for me because with me just coming back from holiday and spending a bit of time away last year, I've gone through quite a few books, audiobooks, and comic books as well. So I thought I'd share my perspective on them, what my recommendations are, how I'm working through them, and where I source them from as well. Let's start with comic books because they're pretty fun and pretty casual, so easy to work through. You can go to your nearest comic book store and there are probably online subscriptions available too, but they can work out pretty pricey, especially with the kind of release after release. I personally opt for the Marvel Unlimited app. Costs around £8 a month and you get unlimited read of current and the back book of all things pretty much Disney, but it's mainly like Marvel and Star Wars in there. If you bang up to date, which you don't have to worry about for some time, the new comics don't tend to drop on there till about 4 months, 3-4 months after paper release. Marvel Unlimited, highly recommend for both casual and catch-up reading. The drawback of it though, that is worth noting, the flow of how you go from one book to the next isn't great, so it's worth having.
Right, okay, he's boring me already. Right. The first point, quick question. Do you read your comics physically or digitally? You mentioned Marvel Unlimited there. Physical or digital comics? What are we saying?
Physical, always. Because, like, I think we had this discussion, like, like in the Discord recently about like having physical ownership of things. And I know that like digital isn't a subscription or anything like that, but I think just like having the physical book is like, especially with comics, is so nostalgic. Like you get like the actual cover art, like the flipping through the pages, and then just like having them. I just think it's quite nice compared to like a digital copy.
See, I've never actually read comic books. I've owned a comic book just because I like the front cover. But the only times I would ever actually read a comic would be if it was within like a magazine or something else. It'd always be a short story. And I understand why people do love comics, because you can get a different side of storytelling, which is pretty much like all action. But I think for me, I would much rather just like watch like live video or YouTube videos or something like that rather than read it. But that'd be the same with books as well. Like I can't really. I'm more of an audiobook person, so I can recommend Star Wars audiobooks, but comics I'm a bit lost on.
Max, audiobooks, novels.
Audiobooks, absolutely not. I'm like, if I'm gonna like, if I'm not gonna get the satisfaction of reading, I might as well watch a film. And so like if I was listening to audiobooks, I would get 15 minutes in and then realize I've not actually listened to the last 10 minutes. I'm gonna have to restart it. But like, I do like books, but I go through phases where I won't touch a book for a year and a half, and then I'll read non-stop for about 4 weeks, and then rinse and repeat. I started the Lord of the Rings, the 4 Lord of the Rings books, or the Hobbit and the 3 Lord of the Rings books. Finished Hobbit and Fellowship, and they are. I don't know if anyone in the comments has read these books, but they are such tough reads in terms of like the language used, like the direction of it, and so on. And like they're fun because it's obviously I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, but my God, some of the English, like you get halfway through and you're like, oh, when will this end?
See, I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, but I was forced, and I mean that, I was forced to read the Hobbit book by my mum when I was like 12, 13 years old. And she was like basically saying, "Nah, you gotta like finish it. You're about halfway through the book, when you might as well finish it." But like, it is like such a tough read for not just a kid, but also because I really don't like this genre. Like, I'm not a big fantasy guy. So like, I thought there were some things in there that were cool when I eventually got to like, what was it, Smaug, however you say his name, the dragon. Yeah. I thought that bit was okay, but
the Hobbit book I found a lot better than the Fellowship book. I'm like maybe a third through Two Towers at the moment, and that was about 4 months ago, and I haven't picked it up since. But I prefer the 3 Lord of the Rings films, but the Hobbit book has so far been better than the Lord of the Rings films that Lord of the Rings books that I've read.
I think for me, I've read a Star Wars book, and it's Star Wars Brotherhood. Has anyone else read that?
No,
I'm getting around to it.
It's a Brotherhood is basically, you know, the scene in Revenge of the Sith where Obi-Wan and Anakin are like, that time on the Kate Name audio doesn't count.
Yeah,
it's the book about the time on Kate Name audio, which that was the only reason I bought the book, was because it actually sold what that was, where Clone Wars didn't. But for me, it was such an easy read. What were your thoughts on it, Harvey?
Well, I was going to say quickly before there was a nice segue there into the newly teased Lego set. If anyone wants to speak on that,
the Lord of the Rings one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm apprehensive. I absolutely live and breathe Lord of the Rings, and like I've got behind camera, I've got my kind of Tower of Isengard set, and I will buy any Lord of the Rings set that they produce, but I wouldn't have gone with Rivendell first. I would have gone with like the Eye of Sauron, like Barad-dûr first, kind of to go with the second, like to be the second of the 2 towers that they've produced. And that's rumored coming out next year. But like I feel like the Rivendell set will be a lot like the Cantina and like the Bugle, where it's kind of like very minifig heavy, displayable, and like you can either display it one way or kind of open it up and that kind of thing. I expect it will be like that. I'll buy it, but I'm probably not a day one buy at the moment.
Betty?
Yeah, I mean, there was a leaked image of it, and there's no truth to whether it is actually going to look like that, but it's very sort of in line with the recent designs of like the air cabin and the medieval blacksmiths that came out. It's got that very sort of sleek, almost Nordic looking elvish style building, which Lego is sort of going down. So it sort of does fit in without it fitting in, if that makes sense. They're coming back to Lord of the Rings. I don't own any Lord of the Rings, but I think if it looks as pretty as Rivendell actually is, I will buy it.
Slightly off topic, but did you see the new Indiana Jones sets?
No, I did not.
I've seen a few images, but they don't really. I feel like they seem quite aimed at like younger Lego fans. Like they don't seem to have that like big displayable Indiana Jones set, which I guess in Indiana Jones there's not a whole lot you can actually do that's like big and displayable. It is going to be play sets.
And the issue you've got, half of the films is filled with Nazis, and you can't really have them as little Lego minifigures, can you?
Just a brick-built swastika.
No.
We had like big pivotal like scenes like in the Legos, like you know the giant boulder that's chasing after him. That's like easy set to get, but like how many other like scenes can you go? Oh, that would be great as a Lego set for Indiana Jones. I can't think of any, but because I'm not in the Lego community, my imagination only goes so far. So
you could do a pit.
How many people can relate to this?
I'm assuming that's to do with Rivendell.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar boat. I wouldn't say I'm not happy about it. I'm happy that they're bringing Lord of the Rings back to start with, but I wouldn't have gone Rivendell first. That's for sure.
Just as a general though, like there's so many Star Wars sets where I'm like, I'm not happy about it, but I'm gonna get it.
Do you guys find with like some of the Star Wars sets that it will get released and you'll look at it and you'll go, not at first. And then randomly, like 10 months into its kind of like lifespan, you're actually like, you just become fixed on it. And you're like, I have to get this. I had it with Luke's land speeder recently. I couldn't care less about it when it came out. And then I was like, fuck it, I love it. I need to buy it.
I couldn't care less about it when it came out, bought it, and I still couldn't care less about it. I just wanted them May 4th promos.
Yeah, for me, like, I've always said from the start about the ATTE, I don't actually want it, and I know I don't want it, but I would absolutely love a Commander Cody. Right? But I'm also like, do I want to just spend 25 quid on a minifigure that I'm not that fussed about? No.
I'll buy it when the helmet comes out.
Yeah, that is a valid.
All right, I think we should.
I'm excited about like the Lego heads and such.
Do you have any?
Harvey behind the wheel.
Yeah,
James, do you have
I just put Liam back in. But yeah, carry on.
No, I was just saying that's like the only thing in the Lego side of things that I'm just quite excited about, having the Rex and the Cody Lego heads available, because I think that they do look pretty cool. I do want to know the thought process as to why did they do phase 1 Cody and phase 2 Rex. I kind of want to I'm not complaining, but I'm very curious why.
When you're in the Lego community, you come to expect these things.
I feel like my only logical reason for that would be because if they did them both phase 1 or both phase 2, the build would be identical with just a little bit of blue or a little bit of orange. Whereas I think making them different will make the sets look completely different, which is that's the only thing I can think of why they're doing it.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, that and potentially some marketing about, what was your favorite? Phase 1, they just did some surveys on several websites. So, but yeah, it most likely is because they look so different.
Yeah, I like how we quickly just binned off the topic of books and comics
straight
into Star Wars and Lego.
Right,
it literally was that. It's like, we'll play Liam's video. Oh fuck that, he's boring me. Right, let's talk about Lego. Yeah.
Okay, right. I think so. He's not sat there steaming at work. We'll get him back in and let him speak for another 2 minutes before I want to rip my eyes out again. And okay.
Lists aside from that, so you can manually search which book to read next, because what you might have is, particularly through my experience, you'll have the Star Wars series, which runs initially between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and then we have Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, which is War of the Bounty Hunters. But then there are offshoots of that story as well, and there's Dr. Aphra, and there's the Vader series, or there's multiple Vader series. So it's worth knowing when you need to come out of that series to jump onto this series. And the book will tell you at the end, but the app itself will not push you to that. So it's worth just knowing the reading list you want to go through. So that's comic books. Hope that helps. Let's talk novels. From my experience, you've got two options here. A little bit like the comic books we've just covered. I started on my Star Wars novel journey reading paperback books, and that was with Dark Disciple, which is a fantastic read, by the way. Physical books can be quite expensive, depending on how much you read, how often you read, how quick you get through them. It can all add up. If you're a bit like me, you kind of have all the best of intentions to read, but then actually don't get to reading. Last year, though, I made the switch to audiobooks and have found that to be massively in my favour. I use Audible, which is part of the Amazon package. You do have to pay, again, another £8 a month on top of your Amazon Prime, and you get 1 credit. With the credit, you can download a book and you listen to it through the Audible app, and you can play it through Alexa and all of that. I particularly found it helpful in the gym, particularly when I'm doing like cardio rather than weights, because you know when you're slamming weights you need that big heavy rock music. Great for if you're in the car and you're traveling, you're on long journeys. Great to just have on, chill out and go for it. With the audiobooks, there are different styles as well. So a great example is the Ahsoka book that is wholly narrated by Ashley Eckstein or Ashley Eckstein. It can get a little bit tedious at times in that when it's one voice actor, it's hard to differentiate the characters. But I've also found where I'm more recently going through the Thrawn Ascendancy books, again, using a single voice actor who is by trade a voice actor, the voice acting is better. There are then other books like Dooku Jedi Lost that have a full cast of voice actors, so every actor has a different voice, and I found those to be my absolute preference. The reading list I'm going through, it's essentially...
I'll stop him there.
I feel like I'm watching a uni lecture or something and trying to get me notes ready for the day.
It sounded to me like a classic like YouTube ad. It was like I thought NordVPN was going to come up. Sign up to Audible for 1 free month and use code Obi-Wan. So £5 of your first Audible book.
I will say that what he mentioned before was actually quite a good point, because like if you have bought a book and then it turns around like, oh, I've not gotten around to reading it, that actually becomes a part of your collection. Because that's one of the main reasons why I purchase physical copies of books and comics, because that goes up on a bookshelf. And if you can surround that with like Funkos and Lego pieces, it is a great looking set that you can have there on its own. So even like you have people out there that buy both audiobooks and physical copies because they want to completely take care of the physical copy, because that is their collection. And they won't even touch those books, which is why they've got the audiobooks, because they'll read it that way. So it's one of those points, and like another perception that a book is a collection, not just what it's there for.
And I think people do the same.
My collection, my Batman Scooby-Doo comic that I've never read, but it sits nicely on my shelf. That has 2 of my favorite franchises just combining.
I think you've got as well with like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter especially, you may never actually want to read the books, but because the media was a book originally, you sort of feel like you have to own that to have that as being a fan and being in your collection, so to speak.
Yeah, agreed.
One thing I did want to mention about one of the things he said was about the same voice actor doing everyone. Now, if any of you have listened to the Dark Disciple audio novel, you know how spot on the impressions of the audio descriptor person is, except for Mace Windu when he just goes full on Bob Marley with it. 1 minute, I don't know if he is the Dooku voice actor or not, but his Dooku sounds exactly like Clone Wars Dooku. I should have probably looked this up, but yeah, I can't remember if he is actually the voice actor for Dooku in the Clone Wars, but if he's not, he does a spot on impression of Dooku Clone Wars. And basically,
so has anyone read Rebel Rising? It's a Star Wars book that talks about Jyn Erso's journey from when she's left in the bunker and growing up with Saw Gerrera. But it's a female voice actor who then tries and does Saw Gerrera. So every time I'm just like cringing away from it, like, please hurry up, stop speaking like this, please. If they could have just hired like a male voice actor to counterpart, it would have been such an easier listen. But I can understand why they're saving money. No, that's.
I've never read a single bit of Star Wars media. I'm very much a watcher. Max is on one fact.
I would definitely recommend reading, at the very least, the Vader comics, because they're just very, like, it just shows Vader in his, like, absolute badass state. Because, like, for anybody that's seen Kenobi, that scene where you see him just walking down that street and he's just casually snapping people's necks, that's comic Vader, where he just doesn't give a fuck. And it's seeing him in those kind of lights, kind of like, it highlights just how powerful he is, because live action will only do so much. They'll show his skill with a saber, sure, but you always are left a little bit wondering, like, if he was to exert everything he has, what could he really do? And the comics really do show that side of him. So it's definitely good to, like, explore that kind of side of him in the comic versions.
Are the comics and books, like, for more of a mature audience compared to, like, the films and the shows, or are they still typically aimed at kids?
I would say some of the comics are definitely a bit more mature, but there are obviously kiddie novels, aren't there?
I was like, well, if we were using the Vader ones as an example, I wouldn't say that it's completely, like, 18 plus, but I would say it's like, I mean, I don't even know if they do have a rating for those, but I would probably put it at the margin of about 14, because you don't ever really see any gore and blood and guts and anything, but you do see, like, some absolute savagery that he's about. It's just one-liners as well, where he just takes out, like, an entire battalion of, like, rebels that's just come to hunt him down. So it's just showing off what he's capable of doing, but nothing more than what, like, I think if anything, you could probably compare it to the scene in Rogue One. Like, he just slaughtered everything, like in sight. And, you know, what rating was Rogue One? Was it 12 plus?
12, I think. Yeah, 12.
So there, I would probably put it at that kind of rating in the comics. You don't see anything more than what you really saw there.
Yeah, my always thing is, obviously the comics is a different style and a different media. Would that, if you took that Vader and put him in live action all the time, would it work? I'm not so sure. I think seeing him in Vader have those moments of pure, intense action and evil, it shows the contrast of it shows that contrast better of him not trying and him trying. Rather, I think the issue with Vader, Kenobi, was sometimes people expecting Vader to be comic Vader all of the time, where you sort of need dips and troughs to then get the high points as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely something that I would recommend.
Started playing The Force Unleashed for the first time today, and playing as Vader in that intro scene, slaying Wookiees, really hits hard after the Bad Batch episode.
Yeah.
Has everyone here played Force Unleashed? Quick.
Not really.
I've watched it.
It definitely sets the tone of the game, because you playing a Starkiller, this absolute OP character that can just pick up 3 stormtroopers at once with one hand and just throw them for like 10 miles straight. Like, when you're playing Vader, opening, just casually walking through, slaughtering all these Wookiees, that's like, okay, yeah, you're really, like, feeling the power behind that controller. So it's definitely set the tone right up for you.
The only Star Wars game I've played was the Lego one that came out like June last year, whenever it was, and like everyone was raving about it and saying it was like the best game ever made, blah blah blah. So I got it, and I'm not even joking. I think I probably played 45 minutes before I was like, this is just the same 5 minutes of gameplay over and over and over and over and over again.
This is the Skywalker saga, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't know if that is like, obviously what we were talking about earlier about how getting older, my attention span with gaming is a lot lower, but I was expecting so much more from that game, and it was just so disappointing.
I think because I played Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga on PS2, and that game was like godly. I think the issue with the Skywalker Saga version is there just wasn't that replayability with the levels. Like, once I'd finished a film, I didn't want to go back and collect the mini kits. I just wanted to play the next one just to finish it, essentially.
I felt that game was far too big. Like, it sounds like I'm complaining, and I guess it kind of is. It's more of a criticism, but it's like, if you're going to do free roam for a Lego game, I feel like Lego needs to be quite condensed the way that you see them in their dioramas. Like, you are only limited to certain, things. You can't just go and travel and just do anything, because if you have such a wide area to explore, sometimes that's just overwhelming and you don't even know where to begin or, and go from there. So I felt like it was very, well, it was just far too much for me, and I've not even 100% completed it. I'm just like, nah.
I feel like with a game like that, because like there are certain games where, like, say something like GTA 5 or the Hogwarts Legacy game that's coming out, I think, is it tomorrow? Like, games like that, like, you can have all those like side missions and the longevity to it because it's a slightly more mature game. There's a little bit more sustenance to it. Whereas I think with the Star Wars Lego game, like, it really is the same thing, just in a different scene, a different scenario. Yeah. Whereas, like, I'm assuming something like Hogwarts Legacy will be truly open map, and you can kind of probably have a million different ways of completing it, which will just make it like a game that's worthy of having such a big map and like the longevity to it.
They said that because apparently one of the developers did play the game from start to finish, story, and even did the full collecting thing. And he said even the developer said it took him over 100 hours plus to do all that. So a developer that knows where everything is, and it takes him 100 hours plus, he, she, whoever it was, that's saying something. So it's probably going to take us a lot longer than that. So if you're like a completionist, you've really got it there. This actually opens nicely up into my little thing that I found out. Now, I don't know if this is common knowledge about Hogwarts Legacy, but I learned this a couple of days ago. Now that we know that there's 3 versions that you can pre-order. There's like the standard base game, there's the deluxe version, and then there's the collector's edition. But you do get different things that you pre-order depending on what console you're on. And everybody in the community has just been saying, well, that's unfair that this console's getting that, they're getting more, etc. So I've literally got a list here from exactly what you do get from every console. So if you start, it's literally on every console, by the way. So if you start with Nintendo Switch, for all versions, this is base, deluxe, and collector's edition, you get like a Hippogriff mount, so something that you can just ride on. You don't get early access, and that's it. That's all you're going to get with pre-order. Xbox One, if anybody, I did come prepped. Xbox One, it's literally the same thing for all 3 of those versions. You only get the Hippogriff mount, but you do not get early access. It is available for PC. On the standard version, you only get the Hippogriff mount. I'm going to say this so many times, Hippogriff mount. You're going to get sick of it. But for the deluxe version and the collector's edition, you do get the Hippogriff mount. You do get early access. That's it. That's all you get.
What on earth is the Hippogriff mount?
So Prisoner of Azkaban, Buckbeak.
Yeah.
That's a Hippogriff.
Oh, okay. And when you say a mount, as in like he's someone you can...
Yeah, so you can fly a broomstick in the game. So rather than a broomstick appearing between your legs, you get a giant horse with wings, basically. So it's that thing.
Sounds like a good friend.
But yeah, that's what you get. With the Xbox Series X or S, on the standard version, you only get the Hippogriff mount. Deluxe and Collector's Edition, you do get early access and you get the Hippogriff mount. So they're the only 2 things you get extra. For the PlayStation 4, for all versions, now this is where it does actually start to get unfair in some of the people's eyes. For the PlayStation 4, you get the Hippogriff mount, you get the Felix Felicis potion recipe, which is like a lucky potion, but you do not get early access. And then lastly, the PlayStation 5, which is just, ripping the shit out of everyone here. On the standard version on the PlayStation 5, you get the Hippogriff mount and you get the Felix Felicis potion recipe. But for the Deluxe and Collector's Edition, you get the Hippogriff mount, you get the Felix Felicis potion recipe, you get early access, and you get a haunted Hogsmeade shop quest. Now that shop quest, all platforms are going to get that, but a year later. If you get it on the PlayStation 5, you can play it from the start, basically. And so PlayStation 5 is getting so much more than all the other platforms, and everybody's been complaining like, well, I've got an Xbox, why can't I get the Felix, potion, or why can't I get this or whatever?
You're legit just making up words at this point. Felix nuisance potion war game. Shut up.
Do you know if any of the versions come with a Hypogryff mount?
Real off the ones that come with a Hypogryff mount again.
Honestly, mate, I've just found that word out today, so no.
I like the idea that like the Nintendo Wii is the only console not getting a Hypogryff mount. They're just like, fuck you, no Hypogryff mount for you.
Well, the thing is, I've seen somewhere that the last gen consoles, like your Xbox Ones and your PS4s, the deluxe editions aren't coming out until a month after. So, like, yeah, I know someone who's basically buying a new Xbox just so they can get the deluxe edition earlier.
Harvey, is Paige's comment alluding to the fact that you haven't seen any Harry Potter?
He doesn't do Harry Potter at all.
Like, I've never seen it.
I'm a casual, but you're a heathen. like that's bad. I don't know. I don't. You early 20s, late teens. Either way, if you've not seen Harry Potter, you need to.
Well, we studied like part of the we had to study part of the last one for BTEC Media, but apart from that, I've never seen it.
Yeah,
they are good. They're not the best thing that's ever been made for me, but they are good. I think mainly because I grew up with them coming out in the cinema and I went to go see them. There is that nostalgia feel to them, but they are good.
That's a good point, actually. Harvey is like 7 or 8 years younger than us and therefore like didn't grow up with them.
I'm 7 or 8 years younger than you. Are you mad?
How old are you?
20.
Okay, well 6 years then. Same thing.
What, Benny, you're like 24, isn't it?
23.
23, there you go.
Exactly. So you should have gone to the cinema and seen Harry Potter as a child.
I was going to say, you can see it at like the young age. Like I always recommend, if you're about 10 years old, that's when you should start, because you should start watching it at the same age as they were, because that's how old I was. I was 10 years old, like roughly the same age as Daniel Radcliffe and all the other cast members when I went to go see the cinema. So I quite literally grew up with them. And I think what Betty's saying is there is some nostalgia point to that. So I think if Harvey watches this now, he's going to think, this is a sack of shit. What am I watching? Like,
yeah, I think I would enjoy it. I think I would enjoy it, but that's the thing. It's like I think I would enjoy it too much. I'm already too deep in too many pies. So I don't think, I don't think this is a easy, I think if I jump in this pie as well, I'll be.
I'm telling you full well, Paige will be like, watch this Harry Potter with me, and you'll do it. And it'll be like 8 or 9 films back to back, and she'll get you on the straight and narrow, because that is not. You need to get on them.
You'll have a rubber.
Paige, if you can do something about this will be greatly appreciated.
No, I'll end up with like all the ones and that, and then I'll be in more debt, and then I'll have even less time.
He's doing
a Neville Longbottom cosplay at Comic-Con next year.
Is there?
Can you imagine?
Be safe.
Can you just imagine Harvey in like a Dumbledore outfit though?
Well, isn't he the Big Donny?
Are you thinking of Hagrid?
Oh yeah.
Get Liam as Hagrid, and you can go as you can basically just go as a Dementor, just like repurpose your Vader costume as and when you've got that.
Yeah, that's easy.
Just take the blade off of your lightsaber, and you've basically got a wand.
Okay, yeah, I could just get a stick out the back garden.
Literally, could find like a sound font that's Harry Potter based as well. Like you can just get like the tip of like the saber green, and then that's your Abracadabra. You've got that sort.
There you go. Parsec, they're just giving you ideas here.
There you go. Yeah, the sound font to get selling. Now be Voldemort, go all out, definitely.
But have you guys all are you guys all playing? Does Legacy come out tomorrow?
Yeah, I have downloaded mine.
Yeah, Betty's counting down the seconds.
Literally. I just can't wait. I can't wait to get on the Hippogriff mount and just, fly around.
Well, make sure you get the deluxe version. It's the clear pattern here.
Yeah.
Have you downloaded the Hippogriff mount DLC?
Well, I actually looked for the Hippogryff Mount DLC and all the other DLCs it comes with, but it's just only let me download the game, so I presume it will
That's
just
the
load
beautiful
on.
thing. The Hippogryff Mount definitely comes with a deluxe version.
Right, oh, perfect.
You're all
What
good
do you
to
get
go.
in the deluxe edition versus the standard edition? I didn't strike me as a game that warranted deluxe.
Essentially early access, and you basically get to do all of the evil spells right from the start rather than having to learn them. So you can Avada Kedavra, not students, because that would be a bit immoral, but you can, like, monsters and stuff you can just kill.
There's
Is
no
this a
like
thing?
there's like no morality settings in this as well, so it doesn't matter if you kill your opponents or what. It doesn't change like how people view you in the game. It doesn't like, you know, I don't think it like takes 10 points from Gryffindor or some shit. It's just the case of, yeah, I'm going to kill you, but by the way, I've got potions class, so see you later. So like, there's no morality thing on that.
Imagine that. Betty committed genocide. Therefore, Hufflepuff have lost the Hogwarts Cup this year.
That was the shit thing I found as well. You can't play Quidditch in this game. Like apparently, yeah, the developer said apparently it was too complicated. I'm like, well, that's bullshit because I remember playing that on the PlayStation 1. Yeah. So you can bring that in for sure.
How are you going to have a Harry Potter game without being able to play Quidditch? That's like the fundamental, like arcade style game you would have in a Harry Potter game.
You can fly.
Can you get like Wii Quidditch or something? I don't know.
You can what?
Can you get Wii Quidditch?
Wii what? Just say that again.
No, Quidditch.
Quidditch.
You say that slowly, Harvey. Just slowly. Wii. Go on.
Quidco. I don't know. Quidditch.
Yeah, that's it. Quidditch. Yeah. You can go to the Quidditch pitch, but apparently in the game they came up with an excuse to say that apparently there was like an accident or an incident, and they've had to like ban Quidditch for the whole term or something like that. So you can go to the pitch and you can fly around on it, but you can't do anything with like, you know, the game itself. So I'm hoping that they'll figure it out though, and it will just come out in an update, and then you just like play a game of Quidditch. I think that'll be really cool. Especially make that online as well.
With how easy it is to make sports games like FIFA, NBA. I mean, NBA 2K is basically the same game as Quidditch, just with feet on the ground. So like you'd think, I know they're obviously completely different like game companies, but surely you can just like intertwine the mechanics and just stick them on brooms.
Yeah, because it's easy to do. Because I'm more than positive that they actually did make a specific game for Harry Potter Quidditch. Like it was just Quidditch. I'm actually pretty sure I had that on the GameCube as well. That all it was just Quidditch. You choose your house, and you know you can play like whichever position you want in the Quidditch game, and then that was that. So it's not impossible for them to just make like it into a mini game. You don't just fly over there and just join in. It's just like you go down there, you push a button, the cut screen kicks in, and then the mini game plays. It's not hard. I don't think the developers are right in saying it was too complicated. It's like if the people on PlayStation 1 could figure that shit out, I'm pretty sure you could.
Yeah.
Tell you what I missed. Do you remember on like PS1s where like if someone did a face, it'd be like a 2D image on like a cube that they'd rounded off, and it was like one of the most god awful things you would ever see, but you absolutely loved it because it was still like the voice of Hagrid or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or similarly, it was like GoldenEye on Nintendo 64, where it was just like everyone was just pointed, and like there was no like round lines in any of the graphics. Everyone was just like triangular.
Complete sharpness. That like when you're like trying to perv on Lara Croft when you're
I was gonna say Tomb Raider with triangle tits.
It's like a square ass and it's like triangle boobs, and it's like, okay, this isn't doing it.
That was six-year-old Max's introduction to women. That just pixelated Nintendo Lara Croft.
Yeah, some of them Pokemon on the Game Boy were kind of bad. I choose you.
There's some really good discussion in the comments. Literally, they're talking about how Harry Potter is basically Star Wars with a reskin, and they are right.
Yeah.
Like you say, old wizard instead of Yoda. Harry and Luke live around an uncle. I think there
was a comedian that pointed this out, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was, and I cannot think of the name.
I can't, because he literally just said Harry Potter was just a rip-off of Star Wars, and then they literally
With
went through
sucky
the whole...
lightsabers.
Yeah,
that's him. Lives with his aunt and uncle, has an old guy that helps him out, that shit. But, yeah. Oh, that was at Parsec Sabres. They said Quidditch World Cup. So that was the game that I was talking about, where they just made a game specifically just for Quidditch. So
see, I've never. This is a bit of a segue, and it's a little bit of a moan, but not a massive one. I never understood why, like, universities had like Quidditch societies. Like, you can't actually fly about on a broom, so you're just going to stand and run about with a broom between your legs and look a little bit like a twat for 20 minutes. I just never understood the joy of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have much of a leg to stand on in terms of like hobbies designed for like nerds, but I agree. Like, it made like props to them for like being out of their comfort zone and like just cracking on with what makes them happy. But come on, like
I couldn't
literally stuck your mum's garden broom under your legs and you're running around throwing a happy sack. Like, go play football, mate.
Right. But I'm having fun. It's like, fuck your dreams. Go and kick a ball.
Do conventional hobbies, you loser.
Go inside and watch cartoons, God's sake.
He says with Lego artwork and the various scenes of Middle Earth on his wall.
Did you get round to watching The Bad Batch this week?
No, I finished the first season and I realised that a lot of the time, and we kind of stemmed from the conversation we were having about Andor last week, where I realised I wasn't watching them. Like, they were just kind of on, and like every now and again, like while I was like building something or cooking or whatever, like I would look over for 30 seconds, and then before I knew it, a whole episode had passed. And so I got about halfway through season 2, or what's already gone so far. And I was like, I've not actually watched any of these episodes. So my plan is to sack it off and start again and actually watch season 2 rather than let it just be background noise. Because, like, I thought season 1 was fairly average, personally. Like, probably biased because I was so into Rebels that I watched beforehand. But I want to give season 2 a proper go. Because I know that you guys are all raving about it. I always see you guys commenting on it and, like, I'm getting FOMO, and so I want to properly see what it's all about.
Is this with Andor or Bad Batch?
Bad Batch.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but I wouldn't be raving about Bad Batch. There's a couple of moments in there that's like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But I mean, is it groundbreaking? Is it like a new type to really be excited for? Probably not, but it's a good show to have that can explain certain things that fans have been pondering and wondering for a while. Yeah. Like the whole Commander Cody thing, the Gungi thing. So all that is kind of coming into place, and they seem to have, not to spoil anything for you, Max, but they've put stuff into place now where a couple of those characters have either had their arcs closed or, so this character actually went here after the Clone Wars and they set them up for something else. So it's one of those shows that kind of is there for the purpose of setting up other people, I think, whilst also telling the story of the Bad Batch themselves. And going on from what you said, Max, I actually thought about what you said last week about how they how it pisses you off over the fact that it's not like mature, if you know what I mean. So it's very kids, not like, I think if it was 16 plus and they had like a bit more gore going on, I think that would have been a very appropriate tone for the Bad Batch, because they're people that'll do what they can to get shit done. So I think them going the less conventional way would have made that more mature. But yeah,
I just thought the personality,
I agree with it.
The personality of the main group of them is just, like, you couldn't write it more perfectly to be a 16 plus show, and they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Do you like it, Betty? Are you watching it?
Yeah, I watched. I almost see it for me as a filler for the stuff I actually want to watch. Like, I will watch it. The last episode was good. It went back to something from the Clone Wars and brought that forward on a planet that everyone loves and remembers from Revenge of the Sith. But I really can take it or leave it. And the episodes I leave, I will leave and will never watch again. The episodes that are good enough, I will like, yeah, that was fine. And I think a lot of that is similar to the Clone Wars, where you've got so many episodes that are just filler and filler. And I can leave them and never watch them again. But some of the arcs in the Clone Wars that are actually incredible storytelling and character arcs coming to an end, and new characters that we see, like Pon Krell, who gets then killed off, and those sort of things where it really does enhance like the Star Wars universe as a whole.
Speaking of the Clone Wars, I've got a proposition for all three of you. Having recently watched Clone Wars all the way through for the first time about 2 months ago, I've only ever heard it being raved about, and I thought it was okay at best. And I was wondering, do you reckon it is the most overrated media in the Star Wars kind of films, TV series, mini series, mini films, like, or do you reckon it's underrated or perfectly rated where it should be?
What do you think, Harvey?
Clone Wars, I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty fairly rated. I would say a lot of people love it, and for good reason. You know, I think it's pretty fairly rated.
Out of 10?
10? No, not 10. No, I give it like an 8, because like as much as I love it, it depends. If you're a child, you'll love every second of it. But if you're an adult, you're watching some of the episodes and you're like, I can't be asked about this little dude inside of a droid's head. You know, so is what it is. But you know, I'd say overall pretty fairly rated.
Yeah.
I think, like I said before, because there's a good comment actually, how you could pin it from J Hole that says the highs of Clone Wars are really good, but the lows are dog shite for me. Like they literally do nothing for me. So I could never give it more than a 7, even though I would say like the last 3 episodes of Clone Wars are like 9 out of 10 media. You can't give the whole show an extremely high rating because of the ending. You know, the ending did what it needed to do for the characters that it made you fall in love with. But there are just some episodes, like parts of season 3 and 4 and 5, where it's just so like, did they need to make this?
Yeah, I would probably agree with you about giving it a 7 as well, because I mean, it's not overrated. It is where it is, but there are like a lot of filler episodes, which is to be expected for a long series, but they really do add to the character development. Because let's face it, I mean, like the Clone Wars was really, well, I mean, if you look at Anakin's character, for argument's sake, he was made to be like a little bit more relatable, and we do understand from that show now that it's not more him just dealing with his mum and the trauma from her death and things like that. There's a lot more factors that's going into why he went to the dark side. It wasn't just Palpatine, it wasn't his mum issues, it was that there was, well, like I said, there's a lot more that goes on to the show. So if anything, the series does help sort of flesh out those characters and make them a lot more relatable and likable. It's responsible for giving me my all-time favorite character, Ahsoka. So
Caddy. You say Caddy?
Get the fuck out of here.
Has anyone checked how much he is?
Too much, whatever it is.
I didn't know if he was available. I thought it was just like saying, "Oh, these guys are coming up." I didn't know. I didn't think to check out the site where they're all listed. Or even
anyway, carry on with your favorite character, Ahsoka.
No, that was it. It was just like on a personal level, it's responsible for creating my favorite character. But all in all, it's kind of there to help make those characters, like I said, be fleshed out, more relatable, more likable. So Anakin became a lot more relatable, probably not more likable, but maybe in the wrong crowd. But it adds more insight. That's the thing. Like Fives' death, for argument's sake, that arc alone was like very well written. Not necessarily something that we had to have, but that also did contribute towards Anakin's downfall, because it's for him, it was more of a reflection of everything, even in his personal life, is starting to crumble, starting to fall down. So he's losing people that he genuinely cares about, and Fives was one of them. And it's just like, it's one of those pillars that's coming down around his life, you know, shit going on, you know, with keeping the secret, with the fact that he's, you know, married, he's got Palpatine whispering in his ear, he's got shit to deal with from his mum, he's got troopers that he's losing, and we know that he has issues with losing people. So when he lost Fives, that was a big hit.
Yeah.
So
And it's how it then links into things like Tales of the Jedi, where Ahsoka's then pushed by Anakin even more because of Five's death. He's then pushed into, you've got to be able to beat these clones. How it then links back to Clone Wars, and then how it then goes forwards to Rebels, and we see a really mature Ahsoka sort of take control of herself in ways that, if you hadn't watched until like the last few seasons of Clone Wars, it was quite hard to make that jump from a Padawan Ahsoka to the Rebels version.
Yeah.
I found it, like, I did enjoy it, as I said, but I think for me, the best thing it did was it completely expanded the Star Wars universe on the screen. Like, because like before all the TV shows came out, it was literally just the 6, now 9 films plus like Solo, Rogue One, that lot. And I feel like I grew up with your standard characters, Anakin, Luke, Han Solo, etc., like the core characters, where I feel like Clone Wars did so good to kind of show slightly more casual fans the likes of the various clones, like the other Jedis that don't get as much kind of screen time in the main films. And I found it that kind of what you said, Betty, there was some arcs that kind of like 3 or 4 episode arcs that were just like brilliant as a standalone, and then it was just kind of junk for the rest of it. Like, you just kind of had 3 or 4 episodes that would just kind of happen, and I'd be like, what was the purpose of that? Like, nothing has really been achieved in the hour and a half I spent watching those 4 episodes. But I do agree that the back end of the last season is peak TV, in my opinion. I reckon 6.5 out of 10 for me. Much prefer Rebels.
Yeah, I agree. I'm an absolute avid Rebels fan. I always found Rebels far more impressive because I didn't really start watching Clone Wars and Rebels until the first lockdown in 2020. That's what really sort of ignited a passion for me. So when I got around to watching Clone Wars, I thought, fuck, this is great. And then when I got around to Rebels, I was like, fuck, this is better. And the only reason I thought that was because it was so much more impressive that while the Clone Wars was building on existing characters and existing storylines, they're just embellishing them. You had Rebels that have created all new characters, and they're making it their own. They're making their own storylines. They all have their own backstories, which was all flushed out and all explored as well. It genuinely made you care about them. Not that you didn't with the Clone Wars, but it's with Rebels for me, because of that impressiveness that it could show you that here's a brand new character that we're going to make you want to cry over. Then that for me is why Rebels will always, you know, sort of top it over Clone Wars. I mean, I could easily give that an 8.5 to 9 out of 10 as a series as a whole. Like, I genuinely love Rebels.
I agree with this, is in terms of Clone Wars versus Rebels, the highs of the Clone Wars are really good, but the lows are not great. So it's like when comparing Rebels and Clone Wars, I sort of like them equally, but for different reasons, because the Clone Wars, the Clone Wars has, if you were to put every episode of Clone Wars and Rebels in a tier list, Clone Wars would have way more S tier episodes than Rebels, but at the same time, Rebels would have far fewer D tier or F tier episodes than Clone Wars. So it's like, while Clone Wars, I think, reaches peak more than Rebels, it also doesn't stink as much as Rebels some of the time. So it's like, as a series as a whole, Rebels, I would rather sit and watch Rebels all the way through from start to finish than Clone Wars. But at the same time, I much prefer the Fives arc or the Siege of Mandalore arc to any of the arcs in Rebels, besides maybe the final 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
I think what you get with Rebels as well is there's a different sort of look at things like the Force. So you get like the Bendu, you get the sort of different attributes of being able, like, so as Edric can talk to animals and stuff like that, and that is a completely different way that sort of fits into the almost sci-fi and fantasy lore. But it was a new way for us to like sort of get into that, and then that was sort of extended through. Oh my god, the Jedi Fallen Order, where Cal Kestis could do that as well, and it was a great sort of avenue to bring in those new themes.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely prefer Rebels over Clone Wars. Like, if I had to, I don't think anything is 10 out of 10. But I would say Rebels for me is the closest to it, probably 9 out of 10. I just found, despite being obviously a kid's show, it was the one. I think the thing that helped it was you were always focused around that core group of rebels and the missions they were doing. Whereas Clone Wars, obviously having double the amount of episodes, you couldn't just focus on Anakin and Ahsoka against the world. Like, you had to build other arcs in order to fluff out that time, whereas Rebels was just focused on them. And so you had that relationship. You built that relationship. You cared about the characters. You were, the next episode always related to the last episode. Whereas with Clone Wars, like, I had to go on Google to find the actual order I meant to watch Clone Wars in, because it's not done chronologically. And it was just kind of like, after a while, I just kind of lost interest and was just kind of zooming through the episodes.
I never really.
Did you ever end up watching the movie?
Yeah, I did. The movie was one of the first non aside from the main 6 movies, the Clone Wars movie was kind of like my reintroduction into Star Wars years and years ago.
It's a good question from Chris.
I would struggle to give like a whole thing a 10 out of 10, because I always think we can improve something. But Andy Serkis's monologue in Andor about One Way Out, as a piece of dialogue, that is a 10 out of 10. Like, to the point where you felt galvanized. I wanted to break out of that prison and I hadn't even been arrested. I wanted to go on and like join in, because it was that good of a speech. And I think the same with Luthen's as well. There are so many sort of 10 out of 10 aspects, but it's so hard to give something on a whole a 10 out of 10, because I would always want to push it. What else could you do for it?
That's my rule. I never give anything a 10 out of 10, but if I had to give something as like a 9.99999, it would go to something in Andor. And the Luthen Rail speech for me just hits every single time. It's just, it perfectly analyzes the sacrifice that the rebellion have to make. Like, we are going to have to do some horrible, distasteful, disgusting things to achieve pure peace. So for a lot of them, it's the ends justify the means. We're going to have to do these horrible things to make sure everybody gets, like, you know, a Merry Christmas. So yeah, it's just that insight, and it's just knowing Luthen's sacrifice on such an intimate and personal level, that he is effectively given up his entire soul, everything, to give everybody else a chance of, you know, a sunrise that he'll never see. So it's beautifully, it's heartbreaking, but it's beautifully well done.
Right. So, do we, yes or no, let Liam finish his video? We're an hour in. Do we let him finish it?
I reckon he's got 2.5 minutes left of my attention span.
You know what? It's 9 o'clock. We'll be going to bed soon, so we may as well get something to help us get in the mood to drift off. So I'll play him.
Star Wars canon timeline, starting with the prequels, the Republic era, and I'm just now moving out of the Republic era into that void between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, which is a great time to be in for me. There is then the High Republic 2, but that is a whole other era that I will get to at another time. Again though, just like the comics, there are reading lists that you can quite easily find with a Google search that will show you the Star Wars novel canon timeline. You can then pick out the eras that you want, you can pick out specific books that you want, or like me, you can just start at the beginning and work your way through. What I have found though, Star Wars are releasing new novels actually quite often and they don't fit into that timeline, so sometimes you have to jump back. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. So you just kind of follow the order that you want to go as well. Audible, like Marvel Unlimited for the comics, does have a delay on the books coming onto there. I don't know if it's because they wait for the book to be released to then do the voice acting and the recording, or whether they want to really push the paperback sales, because I'd imagine there's more money in that before they go down the audiobook route as well. Prime example of that, I'm currently waiting for Padawan. Last time I checked about a month ago, it still wasn't on the Audible store. I think it released around September last year, so again, I'm waiting for that, but it will be due imminently. So that's my experience. I know some of you fellas have read some books and comic books as well, so it'd be great to get your take on how you've sourced these and how you take in all of this information. James, particularly yourself as our Star Wars lore master. But as for you watching, I hope this helped and I look forward to hearing what you're reading next. See you next week.
I hate that title, Lore Master. I hate it.
Oh, don't call me Lore Master.
Oh, stop it. This whole thing.
Would you
I'm
rather?
not incredibly handsome as well. don't.
You can either be Lore Master or Hippogryff Mount. Those are your two options.
I think I've said it enough now, haven't I? It's definitely got to be Hippogryff Mount at this stage. Because if you do order the deluxe, you actually do get the Hippogryff Mount. So
Um,
do you find you have to do a lot of reading of these like novels and info to get the information from your videos?
unfortunately, yes, which means I get spoilt a lot for some novels and comics I haven't actually read yet. Because like what Betty was saying about the whole business on Cato and Nemoidia, I know what happens and I've never read the book. And it's just one of those things where because I get asked all these questions and I end up having to go directly to the source material to find out specifically what they're talking about, areas that I can research, it somewhat takes the enjoyment away from me of just discovering that all by myself in a natural setting, just reading the book from, cover to cover and then learning that completely for myself, rather than just going to a specific page and going, that's what it is. So yeah, I do end up having to read a lot, research and find out specific and other sources, but it's at a personal sacrifice of my own. But you do.
Well, thank you to Liam. I know we've taken the piss, but he's kindly taken the time to record a nice little segment for us, so we can speak on it, which is more than what Nathan did. So, round of applause for Liam. Now, on a real though, it's been a pleasure. Does anyone have any closing regards?
I would like to talk about what we're going to do next week. As next week is the 13th of February, but as I'm hosting and it's the day before Valentine's Day, we're going to do a Valentine's Day special. Nope, you don't have to fall in love with anyone. We're going to talk about rom-coms, the greatest love stories ever told, other love-related things, because I imagine our takes on this are going to be absolutely awful, but equally as funny. I've seen maybe 2 rom-coms in my entire life, and I'm willing to go out on a hill and say that my opinion of them are going to be terrible, but I imagine that's quite good entertainment for people that have seen lots of them.
I've actually seen quite a few rom-coms only because of the actors involved, like Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling and stuff. So like Tom Hardy even, like I've seen those ones and some of them are genuinely funny. It kind of depends on what kind of a rom-com, because you do get the rom-com action or you do get the rom-com that focuses more heavily on like the comedy side, and then you just get the the shitty moments that you find in like a Bridget Jones movie where it's like, don't really want that. But yeah, it's a good one. I don't mind rewatching some of those.
And as well, there's so many love stories throughout sci-fi and Star Wars. Is Hannah Leigh the best love story ever told? Maybe. We don't know. We can talk about it next week. But Yeah, it's been a good episode. We've got over an hour, which I'm very surprised at because I thought with less of it we wouldn't have less to talk about, but we did all right.
I've only just seen like the comment section in the YouTube video from Max inside Harvey's DM special episode. Yeah.
It would be an hour and a half long, just going through like Harvey's DMs.
Oh god, if we had a segment of where we could just swap each other's phones, it'd be.
Oh, for God's sake, I was on mute. Right, okay. I was on damn mute. Forgot. But yeah, I was saying, what is going on in the comments? Because on my screen here, like on the StreamYard thing, it only goes up to, it hasn't updated since Chris saying yes, so we can make a cup of tea. And then I just looked at the stream on YouTube, and all I see is inside Harvey's DM special episode. Like, what's that in reference to? Oh, is that what you want to do? Oh, okay, right. You're not replying to a comment there. You're just saying
next week.
Oh, right. Okay, I see. I thought you was like replying to a
into the Sims of Darth Walker.
God.
Yeah, I thought you was just replying to a comment I couldn't see, and I was like, "What's that on about?" But yeah, because it stopped updating on StreamYard for some reason, so I can't pull up.
Trying to get away from the conversation of his DMs so badly.
Yeah.
No, it literally. There's no more comments since Chris's last one for some
He's
reason.
literally not next week as well. He's going to be like ill or something. So don't worry.
Sorry.
Quick, Harvey, segue into an ending, then no one will notice that we're diversing.
Well, I mean, I'm down. I'm down to do that episode. We can take the piss out of some people. I'm fine. I'm fine with that. But yeah, it's been a good one. It's been a great one. I very much like not having Liam and Nathan here. No, I'm sorry. That was mean. That was mean. I'm sorry. Okay, right. So this is where Liam would say wave goodbye, I think. So wave goodbye.
I don't trust you to turn the stream off in time, so we're just gonna be waving.
I'm not.
I'm not doing it.
Penguin of Madagascar. Smile and wave, boy.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
See you later.
Bye.